Imini 37 na Legislature in Guam is back from recess. Welcome back, colleagues. We're still under motions. Under motions, Vice Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I'd like to move to add a bill, which is time-sensitive, Bill number 295-37 COR, sponsored by myself, Senator Chris Barnett, Senator Sabina Perez, Senator Chris Dueñas, Senator Dwayne St. Nicholas, Senator Joseph Augustine, Senator Roy Kanata, Senator Amanda Shelton, which is an act to amend Section 8104A5A and Section 8104A5B to renumber 8104A5C as Section 8104A5D and to add a new Section 8104A5C, all of Chapter 8, Title 5, Guam Code annotated relative to the modernizing public hearing notice requirements by authorizing the posting of public notices in locally licensed electronic newspapers and websites to the session agenda. And I would like to speak on this motion. I do want to note for the record, Madam Speaker, that this bill was heard on July 19th, and the committee report was filed and uploaded on September 4. And while I wait to speak on the merits of this bill until it is included in our agenda, I just want to do one point of information to point out to my colleagues that the fiscal year is ending, and I believe it will be best for our government agencies if a change to how we procure mandated meetings notices is enacted before the new fiscal year begins on October 1. So I humbly ask my colleagues to include this bill during this session, which was just one vote short when the standard motion was made in the Committee on Rules meeting that established our agenda. Madam Speaker, I will commit to seeking compromises that will address any concerns you may have with this measure, and hope we can find it in our hearts to believe now is the time to update our antiquated laws that restrict our government's ability to notice public hearings. So on the, I'd like to make that motion notwithstanding.
There's a motion to add Bill number 295 to the session agenda. Is there any objection? There's an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries. We're still on motions. Is there any other motion? Senator Taitui, you're recognized. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And notwithstanding the objection of Magahagan Guahan on Vetoed Bill 213-37, which is an act to add a new item 1 to paragraph C of section 1909 of chapter 19 of Title 1 of the Guam Code annotated relative to the duties of the public auditor. I wish to place Bill 213-37 in the voting file for an override and would like to speak on it.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on March 22nd of this year, this body unanimously passed Bill 213-37, which would have imposed a small penalty on the government of Guam directors who fail to provide the Office of the Public Accountability with data needed for the public auditor. Madam Speaker, Bill 213 was created because certain government of Guam directors repeatedly failed to provide the necessary information for an annual government-wide audit. The audit that we, the legislature, rely on for government of Guam operating budget. These delays have been consistent and problematic. The bill received unanimous support from this body because we all know that it was fair and necessary. Some even said it was a little too lenient. On April 3rd, the governor vetoed the bill. On April 26th, I attempted an override, the governor's veto. That attempt failed. That same day, not content with the override failure, the governor issued a statement on the bill. Its author and its supporters, those who voted on the bill. In her statement, the governor urged me to come up with legislation that made common sense. She said, the bill shows a lack of understanding of the audit process. That's odd because it was a public auditor who helped write this legislation. So not just my colleagues here and myself, but she was talking about us not having common sense, as well as a public auditor. Madam Speaker, 213 was written because certain government agencies and directors had failed to do their job. They failed to provide information necessary. Madam Speaker, common sense tells you that something needs to be done, and not just sit around and do nothing, but make accusations that are completely untrue. Our public auditor agrees that the provisions of Bill 213 would provide an incentive for those directors to do their job. Madam Speaker, one thing I would never do is suggest that our esteemed public auditor lacks understanding of the audit process. Where common sense in that, if I were the public auditor, I would take offense to such a statement. Some members of this body attended the public hearing on this bill. All members have access to the committee report issued on this bill. All members agreed that it made sense, and all members voted in favor of this bill. I'm used to the governor attacking me, but if I were a strong supporter of the governor and I was told that I voted for something that didn't make sense, I would feel insulted. I will not stand by and accept that we are swayed for no substantial reasons other than because the governor said so. This is not an appointed office. We were elected. We do a disservice to the people who have placed their vote of confidence in us to make decisions on their behalf and not the governor's. Colleagues, let the people know who you serve today. If it's not the people of Guam, then you will vote yes for the override. If you vote no, you have made it clear you do not stand for the people. If you vote yes for the override, again, it's for the people of Guam. No just says your intentions to sit in this seat as a senator was only self-serving. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the motion, there's a motion. Would anyone like to be recognized on the motion? Senator Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I too rise in support of the override of Bill 213-37. You know, Madam Speaker, when this bill was first introduced and was deliberated, it was pretty obvious as to why it was necessary. I think that to this day, we're still waiting for a audit report that has been due since June, and even last year's audit report wasn't released until the latter part of the year. And a lot of it was because of information that was lacking that agencies had failed to turn over to the Office of Public Accountability for the purposes of being able to perform that audit, which is mandated by law. You know, Madam Speaker, over the last few years, and most recently, just over the last couple weeks, just in this body alone, there have been appropriation measures and whatnot that were basically taken at face value because of what the bottom line says in a report that is generated by the administration. It's kind of interesting how, you know, if you take a look at the report, for the most part, every time I see the report, it's a draft. And that a lot of times their decisions are based on draft, not so much on hard cash. And what the audit does for us, it basically provides for us an accountability of where the money came from, how our money was spent, where it's going. And a lot of that can't be done if agencies nowadays just don't feel the need and the necessity to be able to provide the information in a timely manner. One of these days, it's going to nip us in the butt. One of these days, we're going to be able to appropriate basically based on a crystal ball that hasn't been dusted off yet, or based on an abacus that's been broken, because agency directors, heads, have failed to, in their responsibility, in their mandated inherent responsibility, to be able to provide timely information. So what this bill basically provides is put their feet to the fire. And really, that's too much to ask for? I don't think that as members of this body that we could stand for this. What is our inherent responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, in this body? It's to manage the purse strings of the government. There are tools that are available, that should be available, so that we can make those proper decisions, informed decisions. But you can't make an informed decision if you've got directors, agency heads who just don't want to follow the law. And all this bill does is basically put their feet to the fire. What's wrong with that? And for us to say that we don't understand the basic concepts of auditing? We can't even get to an audit if we can't get the information. How basic is that? I don't know what the consternation is, or what the concern is, or what the fear is in basically making sure that putting this into law. It doesn't hurt anybody. If you're doing the job, it won't hurt you. But if you're not doing the job, then how are we to do our job? I'm dumbfounded as to why, first off, it was vetoed, and why we're having a difficult time overriding the veto on this thing. Why this is not even law yet. And I take a look at some of the legislation that has been passed or that is introduced in this legislature and compare it to this. It doesn't make any sense. Again, nothing in this law basically would hurt you, would harm you if you're doing your job. But if you don't do your job, it's not something you can just put away and say, oh, I don't have to worry about it. They'll forget. One of these days, us forgetting is going to nip us in the butt. So again, I rise in support of the override of Bill 213-37. And I'm asking my colleagues to do so. Thank you very much.
This is a small seat minority leader. On the motion on Bill 213, Senator Brown, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I also rise in support of the override of this bill. And I, like my good colleague from Barrigada, kind of dumbfounded as to why the administration has resisted and continues to address, essentially resist accountability in the government of Guam. We sit here and we wait for these audits so that we can hopefully, well, some of us don't wait. We want to appropriate money whether it's audited or not. Responsibly, we should ensure the money is audited and make sure it's available. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, we need to, certainly on behalf of the people, or the people more importantly need to know how their money's being spent. And is it being spent properly? I keep bringing this up. A few of us in this body keep bringing it up over and over and over again, perhaps to the ad nauseum of some. But, we just passed a $1.3 million budget. Billion now. Unprecedented. And yet, when the budget law or the budget bill leaves this legislature, leaves these halls and is signed into law, or becomes law with or without the governor's signature, how do we ensure how that money's being spent? How do the people of Guam, more importantly, because us, we like to think we're important, our big smiling faces on the side of the road all over Guam. People, more importantly, should have the right to know how their money is being spent, and is it being spent properly. These acts of avoidance that we continue to see over and over and over again, all the way from the top, from the governor herself sitting up there at Adelup Hill up on high. Every attempt to ensure accountability and responsibility of the government of Guam, of directors, of agencies, departments, whatever you want to call them, there's such resistance. You got to ask yourself, why? Isn't that what we're here for? Isn't that what we tell the people when we're smiling in our commercials? How we're here to make their lives better, that we're the man or the woman for the job? Please vote for me. I want to ensure you have responsible government. But when the time comes, and this is one of those moments, Madam Speaker, when the time comes, here it is, to ensure that directors, and I've been a director of several agencies in this government with several considerably important operations. I don't have a problem being held accountable or responsible for my job, for the time that I'm there. Because goodness, if I'm not performing my job, I or anybody else shouldn't be sitting there. They shouldn't be in those positions of responsibility. It's almost like this is a game. Why don't we just sit down and play with our jacks and our marbles? Because it doesn't seem like we're actually looking at operating a responsible government. And one of the things you need to do when you assume these positions, when you're appointed, confirmed, approved by your board, whatever the case may be, your job is to do your job and meet the requirements and the mandates of the position to which you are holding. But we can't blame the governor by herself because, wow, there's my own colleagues here in the legislature that seem to have such tremendous difficulty in holding this administration, or any, because this would hold any future administration, be they Republican or Democrat, to ensure that they get these audit reports completed in time. Because the governor doesn't seem to be pushing on it. We see time and time again, key members of the cabinet, my goodness, departments mess up, and it's almost like a rite of passage. What is so difficult of holding people in these positions of power and authority over our people responsible? What is so difficult about holding them accountable? especially when it comes to the money of the people. It's not our money, even though on this floor of this legislature we like to act like, hey, we're the one, you know, we got the pockets here. We get to decide how your money gets spent. Really? But you know, our people of Guam, you need to decide that in a month and a half. Because it's kind of pointless talking to my colleagues here, because we already know how this is all going to ride. We already know who's going to vote no on this. So this is a lost cause in this room right now. People of Guam, you decide. Is that okay with you? To have directors not perform their job, particularly with regards to ensuring accountability of your money. Are you okay with that? Because I'll tell you, a majority of the members in this current body are okay with that. Every time accountability comes to this table, we talk about it, we give it some attention. We talk about transparency. Oh, we're just so transparent. Look at us. Woo. We're so accountable. When it comes to actual practice, there are a number of members in this body just as responsible for what's happening in this government, because not only do they turn a blind eye, they don't even open their eyes. So people of Guam, I'm going to talk to you directly. I'm going to be talking to you probably in the next few weeks more. Is this okay with you? You need to decide. Take the time and take a good look at all of us. A real good look. See how we vote. Because it's very hard for any of us to sit here and talk about accountability in this government and responsible government and good government and government to serve our people when we don't ensure through the passage of legislation that that is indeed the case. That there are requirements in place, and if you don't perform and meet those requirements, there are consequences. Goodness, isn't that what we teach our children? To be good, and if they're not good, hopefully we take away their privileges. There nowadays is taking away their computers and their toys and their electronics. Us, it used to be our toys and our free time when we were growing up. The fact that this bill doesn't pass, if this bill doesn't pass, once again, an override is very telling. But you people of Guam, you decide. Because I'll tell you, I ain't seen it. I haven't seen it. This is my second term back after a 14-year absence, and I have not seen it. This type of legislation, the old legislature would have flown right on through here. But now, oh no, we're all friends with the Hill. And if you people of Guam think that's a good thing, if you think that all these government officials are going to act responsibly and do the right thing, that they're just all good little boys and girls, then I guess we can all go home and it's all good. We're all comfortable. It's not always been the case, unfortunately. That's why we put laws in place. That's why we put standards in place. That's why we put requirements in place. That's why, you know, these high-paid directors are required to perform. And when they don't, there should be a consequence. Normally, I've only worked for 2 governors. I'll tell you, their solution was termination. And just members of the cabinet just disappeared. They just weren't at the next cabinet meeting. Sometimes it was public. Sometimes you just weren't there anymore. But here we are. Most of these directors earn 6+ figures, highest paid directors in the history of the government of Guam. $250, gosh, penalty, really? Senator Tulloh should have made it higher. When you're talking about the $1.3 billion of how the people's money's being paid and spent, yeah, we should require directors to report in a timely fashion. They've got the authority and the power to do that in their departments. They just got to do the work. Isn't that what we expect of them? Isn't that, people of Guam, what you expect of all of us? I hope so. Because if we're just going to turn out the lights, oh my, oh my, oh my. What do we think is going to happen? So I rise, Madam Speaker, in spite of maybe the majority here that don't believe in it. They don't believe in it because they don't support it through legislation. They just quietly sit there and they'll vote no on this bill and it won't get overridden. Maybe it's going to have to take the next legislature, maybe the legislature after that. But we need to keep fighting. We need to keep ensuring that this government is responsible. We can't leave that up to those in place to hope, because we've seen too many, turning of the eyes, ignoring it, letting it go, especially when it's on our side and under our own rug. Let's hide it. Let's not talk about it, unless it's blaring out there. But that's not the right thing to do. I don't believe, people of Guam, that's what you expect of your elected and appointed officials that actually run the resources and your money. Would you just give us a few $1,000s to do with it as we will? Would you give us millions of dollars? Would you give us $1.3 billion to not be responsible or accountable in how that's spent? Well, I leave that to you to decide. But I'd rather have these standards and requirements in place and performance requirements in place, so that those that are in positions of authority do the responsible thing and do their job and ensure that the information with regards to the financial operations and expenditures of their department or agency are forwarded to the public auditor. We made the public auditor an elected office, Madam Speaker, because we didn't want to leave it under the umbrella of the administration, not this administration or any other administration in the future. Because we wanted a public auditor that was going to be there to ensure that the interests of the people's money was responsible, was accountable, and ultimately protected and used for its intended purpose. I was there to vote for that, just like we voted for the elected Attorney General. Isn't that something? The tone's real different these days. Now it's total opposite. Now it's free-for-all. Now it's jungle rules. And the fact that we're here, we just did what the most major operation of this body is, to pass the annual budget. But to not ensure that that money is properly spent, to not even want to ensure that the information we're being provided is as accurate as possible, that's concerning. Because goodness, we've had so many different representations in front of us. We're told one thing and then something else happens. How's that responsible budgeting? How is not ensuring these agencies are meeting those financial requirements? Because you got to wonder, if they're not, how do we guarantee how the money's being spent? How is the people's money being spent? When we don't have these requirements, when we don't literally have the feet of these directors being put to the fire. Now, why do they care? Do you see the governor up there ensuring that her cabinet's delivering on time? Well, if she was, I guess some of them are failing. And I guess maybe that's okay for some people in this hall, maybe a majority of people in this hall. But people of Guam, ask yourself, is that acceptable to you? Because when you don't get the service that you want from the government, when you're dissatisfied with the service you're getting from this government, the next time you drive your car into a pothole, maybe the next time you need help with the Guam Police Department, maybe the next time you want to ensure your child or grandchild or great-grandchild is getting a good education and they're not, you got to wonder why. Is it there's just not enough money being poured into the system and authorized by this body? Or is the money going where it's supposed to go? And how do you know if it's going where it's supposed to go if you don't have these audits and you don't have the Office of Public Accountability verifying and ensuring not only what the balance is, but more importantly, ensuring how that money is being spent and used on your behalf? So that we have some comfort level in knowing that when we appropriate these funds, they're going for their intended purpose and they're going to serve the people and not somebody else. So I rise in support of the override of this bill, Madam Speaker, and people of Guam, please, even if you don't pay attention to us every, most of the 2 years, maybe take a good look at us in the next month and a half and make that decision, because you're ultimately going to get the government that you vote for, and I hope it's one that you want to ensure accountability. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on this bill.
Sijasmasi, Senator. On that motion, is there any other senator who'd like to be recognized? on the motion? Vice.
Speaker Therese, you're recognized on the override.
Citizens Mossy. I rise in support of the override of the veto of the governor on Bill 213-37 COR. The bill, as some have previously stated, is very simple. Very, very simple. It says the public auditor is authorized to set deadlines on agencies to submit financial information of the government. And if they don't, they will be fined $250. And he says the reason we need that is because our financial audits have never met the June 30 deadline that has been set by statute. And according to his testimony, untimely submissions by government agencies and instrumentalities are the sole cause of delinquent audits. So he's trying to hit the problem right where it lies, and that is, if he can't get the information from the agencies, we, the legislature, the governor, the people of Guam, will never get the financial audits of the government of Guam that we need in order to make responsible decisions. We're never going to get those on time. And this recent budget was another example of we went through the entire budget process without the financial audit, not of FY 2024, but of FY 2023. So we're talking about the previous fiscal year, which ended in September 30. And we're talking about June 30 of the next year when these agencies are sometimes not submitted their information. And so we want these audits. So we want to authorize the public auditor to set a deadline. And that is exactly how government should operate. There should be deadlines. Directors should meet the deadlines. And the information should be made, the audit should be completed, and we should have the actual facts when we are deliberating. So it seems simple. But there was a long veto message vetoing this bill that was approved unanimously at first by this legislature. First, the governor said, that agencies were not invited to testify on the bill. I don't know what that means, because we have very strict open government law notice requirements. And none of those have been challenged for this bill, to my knowledge. So agencies maybe just are not paying attention. I don't think every agency of the government needs a very specific invitation to pay attention to bills and public hearings that are going on in the legislature that will affect them. And if a cabinet can't notify each other that there's a bill that affects all of you agency heads, I don't see that as a reason to veto a bill. Number two, the governor says that the claim that all of the delays in the audit process result from agencies simply missing submission deadlines is not true. That's what the governor says. That claim is not true. I guess she's saying that the OPA lied. That the public auditor lied to us when he said the reasons we can't get these audits is because the information is not submitted timely. So I don't know what's going on here. One's saying the other one's lying. This is the public auditor we're talking about. And then the governor goes on to say delays often result from the actions of the auditor. The next reason that she gives for for vetoing the bill says that even if you imposed a fine on my directors, according to the governor, those directors will not act more timely. That's another reason I do not get. We're saying we're going to admit to the Guam public that you can fine them all you want, we're just not going to comply. It sounds so deliberate. It sounds so, I don't need to comply with any law I don't want to comply with. It sounds like my agency directors are going to be protected by me for not doing their jobs. That's what it sounds like. So I don't know who wrote this, but I just can't see why this is going to be grounds to veto a bill to require directors to submit financial information. And they're the only ones we're going to get this financial information. Is the public not entitled to this financial information that should have been completed after September 30, the end of the fiscal year, and up to June 30, we still are not entitled to that information? And then, another reason. Fines do little to ensure that reporting is timely. Fines will not make sure that the reporting is accurate or that the directors, she says by putting a deadline on the directors, that would compromise accuracy and completeness for the sake of expediency. Again, we're talking about deadlines in the next fiscal year for information that should have been compiled as we went along in the previous fiscal year. Months available to these directors. And then in the end, the governor's veto message blames the public auditor again, that he is just not working cooperatively with the agencies, and that's why they're delayed. I don't know if this is a he said, she said, or it's really simply trying to gaslight the public. Because if the public auditor writes to an agency asking for information, I don't know what kind of working together more does he need than give me the information. That is public information. It should have been your job to compile it. Please send it to me because it's my job to compile a financial audit for the entire government of Guam. And it's our job as a legislature to insist that when we're going to make a budget and we're going to talk about the financial implications of anything that we do here, that we know what we're talking about because we can get the data. And we can get it for the previous fiscal year and not several fiscal years later, as we've been seeing. It's very simple. It's a standard that I believe that the people of Guam are entitled to. And I believe that by overriding this veto, we as a legislature would be saying, you are still entitled to this standard of government. Our people are still entitled to all the information of the government. Directors should give it timely. They should be competent enough to do that. They should be responsible and willing to do that. It's not the public auditor's job to go hold their hand and beg them for the information. That makes us less efficient. We've got critical work to do. This is just one tool that would help us, I think, to do our jobs better. So we don't have to listen to the opinion of the so-called financial experts telling us, we think you can do this. We think the money's there. We can see for ourselves where it went, what is left. And we can all share in the prosperity of what we might find. So I don't think we should have anything to hide by delaying audits. I don't think we should allow directors to say, I'm not going to give you accurate information if you rush me. I don't think we should say, allow the governor to veto the bill and allow it to not go back into law because of reasons like it's OPA's fault. I say we put this burden on both of them, and both of them, the agencies and the public auditor, are going to have no reasons left that we can't get our audits on time. It's simple as that. And so I support the sponsor of the bill in her motion for an override, and I thank her for her continued efforts that we have transparency in our government, and we put our actions behind our speak on transparency. So, Jesus Masi.
Anyone else? Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Sidos Masi for the opportunity to also rise in support of this override attempt. My vote has been consistent on all of the override attempts, and it'll remain the same as it was the last time we tried to override this. I believe we fell one vote short of this. And a lot of the retiring speakers had talked about the need to hold these agency directors accountable. And for me, that's what this is really about. And it does kind of make you wonder why this administration and some of my colleagues in here who had, I mean, every single one of us, I believe, unless you weren't present, initially voted to support this bill and voted to support the effort after, if you attended the public hearing, the public auditor was very frustrated in explaining how he doesn't get this information, about how he has to hold these agency directors' hands, about how they're acting like little kids because they're not giving him the information that not just he needs, but we need to move forward. And so what happens when we don't get that information? We're stuck in here taking Lester Carlson and Ed Burns' word for it. And, granted, these are the guys who, told us the $20 million from GDOE was here, there, and anywhere but where it was supposed to be. So why? To me, that's the big question, my dear people of Guam, and thank you for watching. I know it's been a very, very hot show today. Why, though? Why would this administration and the senators who switched their votes for this administration, why would they not want to hold these directors accountable? I think the answer is very simple and very obvious, and it's something we're seeing a lot of today. It's politics. Quite simply, it's the politics. The politics of election. One of the retiring speakers had talked about how, watch us very closely in the next 40-some days because we are in full-on election mode here in the legislature, as we're just, a little more over, I think, 40-some days away from the general election. But this administration has been in election mode since December of last year. As many of the colleagues have said on the floor, pointing fingers about who wants to run for governor, who wants to run for lieutenant governor, And I've been one of the people who has said repeatedly that the only person on this island who is running for governor right now is Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio, who announced in December of last year that it was his intention to seek the governor's seat in 2026. And I think that's why they don't want to hold the directors accountable. Because these directors are fighting for another 8 years of the career that they've been able to have in the last 6. And these same directors have helped raise $185,000 for the lieutenant governor's election bid in 2026. And like I said when I spoke on this measure before, if you can afford to buy $500 fundraiser ticket to wine and dine with Josh Tenorio, then you can afford to pay the fine to the public auditor or whoever it goes to if you're not doing your job. That's accountability. And I think it's safe to say that's what the people of Guam want. And so when we ask ourselves, why don't they want to hold these directors accountable? I think it's because right now these directors are in a very good position to get what they want out of this administration so that they can hang on for another 8 years and get those $30,000 raises that they've been getting. And if that's not the case, then, I have yet to hear a compelling argument from any of the colleagues in here who originally voted to support this measure's passage unanimously. And in fact, the last override attempt that we had, I don't know if anyone rose to speak to those points to say, I flipped on my vote, not because, I don't even think they need to tell people to flip. I think they just see the letter and okay, well, I guess we're not voting for that again. Sorry, dispensa. But we haven't heard any compelling reasons as to why we would see a 180-degree turn. Why, before the governor told you it wasn't okay, why you said it was all right to hold these directors accountable. Why you said it was okay. You raised your hand in support of what the public auditor, B.J. Cruz, said. Which was he needs this information in a timely manner, and he is not getting it from these directors who we originally planned to hold accountable when we passed this bill unanimously, I might add. And as I sit here in the front and I listen to the speakers get up and stand, and this happens a lot, I can hear the groaning, the shifting in the chairs. Oh, God, there goes so-and-so again. I feel your frustration. It's frustrating to get up and to speak common sense and to speak reason and to speak to what our people want and deserve, which is more accountability in this government, knowing full well that the votes, or in this case, the votes aren't there. Because some people in here who made a decision one way saw the writing on the letter from the governor, and now they're going to go the other way. And so for what it's worth, Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this override attempt, and I ask my colleagues to think about what was in their head on the day that we passed this measure and we sent it over to the governor's desk. Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker.
Sijus Masi, on the motion, Senator Fisher, you're recognized on the motion.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I am not going to vote to support an override, although I did initially support the bill. The question, this is not a question of flipping your vote, so I'd just like to, I guess, illustrate for my friend, the retiring senator, that the question is utterly different. The question is, shall this body override a constitutional organic decision of the second branch of government? That's a big deal. The second branch made a decision. Whether we or not we agree with it is a separate question. But in order to exercise an override of a veto requires there to be more than just an opinion on a bill. We have rendered an opinion. The second branch has rendered an opinion. We have failed to override this once, and now we're doing, I guess that's called a mulligan, we're a do-over. My observation is just this: it is not a small thing to override an executive branch veto, and I don't think that the circumstances that have obtained here are sufficiently grave or moving that would suggest that we do override the veto. So I will respect the opinion of a co-equal branch of the government. Thank you, ma'am.
Jesus Masi, on the motion to override Bill 213, is there anyone else who would like to speak? If not, then the sponsor of the motion may close. Senator Taitakuri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleagues who spoke on the override for this bill, a bill that the majority of individuals here in this body all voted in favor of. Madam Speaker, you mentioned in your comments there is a law currently on the books that require that all audits should be done by July, the month of July. And that has not been the case for many, many years. We even have a law on the books regarding the CRER report. And if BBMR fails to give us a CRER report, there is a fine that the director must intake, be penalized for. So this is very similar to that. We're not inventing anything differently here, but what we're doing is trying to have accountability. Accountability, and they talk about the co-equal branches of government. And it's ironic that this body has one duty, and that duty is to pass a budget. And it's even recognized in the Organic Act of Guam, not just the Guam Code Annotated. In fact, Madam Speaker and colleagues, not only is the Guam Code Annotated required for an audit in July, but in fact, the public auditor testified, stating in section 1422 of subchapter 2 of the Organic Act states, the governor shall prepare, publish, and submit to Congress and the Secretary of the Interior a comprehensive annual financial report to conform with the standards of the National Council of Government Account within 100 to 120 days from the close of the fiscal year. That's in the Organic Act of Guam. I'm surprised Guam has not been sanctioned by the federal government for not complying. My good colleague from Chalampago said, it's not just this administration, it's future administrations to comply with providing this information in a timely manner so that this body and those who will come after us, to give them the tools that are needed when putting together a budget, a financially responsible budget. And it's very difficult when you don't have all the information. There is a law that does the same thing for the CRER report if the director doesn't provide it. So why are you being so hard up on this one? I could tell you one thing, even though it's only $250 for not complying, and they make 6 figures as directors, it's still a small amount. There are some directors, Madam Speaker, who are complying, who provide the information, who are responsible. But that won't help the public auditor because he has to have all agencies submit their audit so he can put out an audit. So even though we got some good directors who provided in time, those bad actors are the ones that are holding it up. Colleagues, that's all we're doing. And those who are listening, I know I've got your texts saying, that is common sense. I'm going to watch this when it comes voting time. I said, well, actually, let me send you a video of the last time we tried to get this bill through. Passed by 9 votes. My good colleague from GIGO realized, because he's chairman of the finances, that understands the importance of having that audit, and voted in favor. So we just need one more. One more senator with common sense. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Sijusmasi, Senator. So there is a motion to place the override of Veto Bill 213-37 onto the voting file. Is there any objection to that motion to place it onto the voting file? Seeing no objection, that motion carries. It was still on motions. Senator Brown, you're recognized under motions.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to make a motion notwithstanding the governor's veto on Bill 227 to place this bill in the voting file. I'd like the opportunity to discuss the purpose of my motion. And I'll read the title, Madam Speaker, so our colleagues are aware of which bill we are talking about. It's an act to amend Section 1909I of Chapter 19, Title 1, Guam Code Annotated, relative to enhancing the independent status of the Office of Public Accountability, OPA, by continuously appropriating 1/4 of 1% of the Government of Guam's annual budget to the OPA.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I guess Bill 227 appropriately follows the bill by Senator Tello that I co-sponsored with her to at least ensure that directors provide information to the government and to the people of Guam in a timely fashion. This particular bill, Madam Speaker, I put forth because the person that requested it was actually the public auditor himself. And I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? If there's probably one office in the government of Guam that I would like to have independent to be able to ensure that they properly do their job, is the Office of Public Accountability. As we mentioned earlier, you know, we have now had the largest budget appropriated in the history of the government of Guam, $1.3 billion plus. That, of course, I'm sure doesn't include all the hundreds of millions of dollars of federal funds that we receive here on Guam. But that's a lot of money. And in return, this bill is simply asking for a small percentage of that to be set aside so that the Office of the Public Auditor can actually feel independent. But he doesn't. And the interesting thing is, at the time of this veto, the public auditor himself brought this up. You know, remember that public auditor, B.J. Cruz? I remember listening to all the farewell speeches on the floor of this legislature commending the outgoing speaker for his leadership. B.J. Cruz, who's held significant positions of leadership in the administration, who serves as a judge, a justice, a chief justice, and of course has served and is now serving our people as the public auditor of Guam. And he himself, who up until, you know, he ran for this position, which of course he could take no political party status, a Democrat. I here as a Republican, a lifelong Republican, am on the floor advocating that his office, of course, because ultimately our positions are not our own. We hold them temporarily. But I'm advocating for the concern he's raised. Because I think ultimately, Madam Speaker, while we appropriate the money, we must ensure that the people's money is being properly spent and that the people's money is going to where it was intended to go. So that things are people, and it hasn't changed, my dear colleagues. And I know my people of Guam out there, your priorities haven't changed. Maybe the membership of this body has changed, maybe the governors have changed, but your priorities have never changed. I mean, we can survey, and survey again. Education, public safety, healthcare. All those things that you decide are important, that you want your government to perform and be responsive to, so that we can have a good quality of life on this island, a safe quality of life. We need to ensure that the money's being properly spent, because there is no other entity in the government that can do that. Sure, maybe the federal government has their own auditors when they look and, go and review how their federal funds are being spent. But I'm concerned with how our people's money is being spent. In a few months, we're going to ask our people once again. April's going to roll around right after Christmas. And they're going to have to put their hard-earned money and pay their taxes. They don't even have an option on that. They don't get to choose not to pay their taxes. I believe they have every right to ensure how their money is being spent. And I'm actually surprised that the governor herself and that, even the members of the legislature that put their name on this bill previously would not vote to override the governor's veto. Why is that so difficult? You'd think that this would make such an easy decision. Why would we even have any reservation about ensuring that the people's money, that the money we appropriate here in this body is spent as it's intended to? That hopefully there are no sticky fingers out there that are wanting to take the people's money and misuse it or misspend it. And that we're ensuring that the money is going where it's supposed to go. Why is that? Why is there resistance to that? The people have every right to know how their money is being spent. And interestingly, as I mentioned a little earlier when this bill was vetoed, the public auditor himself publicly came out and relayed his reservations. That he was not hoping that, remember, he requested an audience with this body. Specifically to bring to our attention concerns that he had with regards to substantial, not a few dollars and cents here or there, but how millions of dollars may have been misspent by Homeland Security. And that the federal government may request that this money be paid back because it may not have been properly spent in the first place. I'm still waiting for that public hearing. I hope it comes up soon. I think the people of Guam are waiting for that hearing, the oversight hearing with regards to these issues that have been brought up. Because you know what, Madam Speaker? There was no official means of that information ever coming to us, except for the public auditor knocking on our door. And those little birds out there? I don't know if they're chicharikas, but we see the chichari. Maybe they're chicharica birds. But they like to land every now and then, and they got a lot to say. Is that how we're supposed to run the government? We're going to wait for the chicharica birds to come in here? I remember all the pigeons that used to fly in here before this building was renovated. They used to fly all over the place here. Is that what we have to wait for to ensure we know that the money's being properly spent, or even worse, when we hear that it's being misspent? And then who gets held responsible for that? Do we just allow government officials to be irresponsible and misspend money, not ensure that requirements of grants in particular that have been given to our people are being followed and implemented? That procurements are proper and procurements are accounted for? That money's not ending up in pockets they're not supposed to be ending up in, and that they're supposed to be in the right pockets for the right service? or the right goods that are being procured? This is not a solution I would recommend, Madam Speaker, for every government agency. I know the judiciary is knocking on the doors saying, hey, what about us too? You know, us in our robes. I wouldn't necessarily advocate for that, and I've got good friends in the judiciary, but I wouldn't advocate it. I am advocating it for this office, because I think there has to be an independent office of the public auditor. We saw in years past when the public auditor used to be appointed how those audits used to turn out, if they turned up at all. Because how's a public auditor going to come up and provide an unfavorable audit on an administration and a governor to which he or she would work for? I think we saw where that mess was. That's why I was there also to support, as I mentioned earlier today, having an independent public auditor, one that was elected by the people. Because then it would be the people that would keep track of the performance of the public auditor to ensure that he or she performed their job. And if they didn't, they could vote them out of office and remove them from their position. But the fact that the public auditor asked for this, he didn't feel independent. He doesn't feel independent. And really what we're asking for, even though the governor elaborated, my gosh, I think she wrote like almost three pages. It's a long response. Even though, Senator Tello, I told you my veto is bigger than yours. I got a bigger veto. I got to take my pen one day and just do that just to see what it would be like. It really is little what we're asking for here. And even though we say, oh, you know, we're giving the public auditor that amount anyways. As a matter of fact, we're giving him a little more. It's okay. It's all good. The fact that he also said, Madam Speaker, that he'd be willing to take a cut if that's where things were, revenue decreased, he would willingly take a cut. I don't know, I believe him. I don't got any reason. I've been on the other end of BJ Cruz for many years, even on this floor, even as a colleague in this body. But I actually believe him that he would take the cut. Colleagues, we need to be responsible. People of Guam, you need to hold us accountable. Because the direction that we have been going in the last few years in this legislature, even before then, goodness, even the first 2 years of this administration, to not require, to not mandate, to not demand accountability of performance, especially when I heard the chorus on the previous Republican administration. Boy, we got taken through the ringer in the last few months of our time. And then when the Democratic administration's all quiet, hey, don't even talk about it, Anna. We don't see it, we don't hear it, we don't know about it. We've gone the opposite, total 180-degree turn. When we ask for accountabilities, no. No, 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 and no. But people of Guam, please vote for me, Sat. Whatever it is we say that we believe the people of Guam want to hear to put us in power. Maybe they need to reassess who they're putting in power, especially when ultimately we find out money's not being spent as it should be spent. As in the case we're hearing now with Homeland Security. Who do we depend on when we have a natural disaster or a man-made disaster? Maybe that explains why when we had the last major typhoon, even though people said, you know, it's been 20 years since we had a major typhoon, that office was not as responsive as they needed to be. We don't even know how they're getting paid. We don't even know if the feds have stopped providing funds. We don't know what programs are being cut. We don't know what demands are being made for what they may owe. Or have those demand letters been provided already? I don't even know that. How are the people of Guam going to know it? Because we have yet to have the public forum. I hope we're going to have it soon. We need to have it. Because I'll tell you, I don't know how you can squander that kind of money and get that kind of report that, again, the administration never was forthcoming with that. They never came knocking on our door unless they spoke to any of you, anyone else in this hall. to say, oh, we might have misspent $38 million. Oh, shucks, wow. Hey, you gonna pay for lunch? Come on, colleagues, this is not rocket science. You don't need a PhD to figure out the need or demand or expectation of accountability, or the need for independence of this office. Right now, it's B.J. Cruz. Before, it was Doris Brooks. Who knows who the next public auditor is going to be for the government of Guam, but I certainly want to make sure they're doing their job. I want to make sure they're on their toes. I want to make sure their pencils are the sharpest in the government of Guam to ensure that the people's money is being spent where it needs to be spent. So I, again, Madam Speaker, asked my colleagues, and I ask you people of Guam, look at the votes. I already know where the votes are going to go down. You need to decide what you want for your government. If you want transparency and accountability, not just by words, but by deed and action, to ensure that the Office of Public Accountability is independent, so that when they come up with their findings, especially if their findings are not favorable, that they have the freedom to do that and provide that information to the people and not be pressured or harassed or hassled. They need to be able to freely tell the people of Guam how their money is being spent or misspent, if that's the unfortunate case. And we need to give the Office of the Public Auditor the independence to do that. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on Bill 227.
Situsmasi, Senator. On that motion for the override of Bill 227, is there any other senator who would like to speak? If not, Sponsor Senator Taitui, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand in full support of the override for Bill 227-37. This bill too passed this body. Madam Speaker, let's take the politics out of the public auditor's office. I don't know how many times we've come in situations where we have a bill and we're trying to go to an agency or department to discuss with them the bill. And that agency depends on who you are. If you're good friends with the governor or not, that they'll give you the time of day. Some of these agencies do that to us. Here we are trying to create legislation, good legislation, that would help protect our island and our people. And we come in situations where it depends what side of the aisle you're on before you can get any kind of assistance. And of all the agencies, if you want to know something, it's the public auditor. You follow the money. I remember my father used to tell me that. Just follow the money, and you'll see if there's any shenanigans going on. Follow the money. Let's take the politics out of this public auditor's office. Allow that independent auditor to provide the information freely without being coerced into doing something the administration wants instead of doing what's right, because they might be afraid not to get enough funding. And we all know that's true. Let's play nice so that we get our budget. They're not going to cut our budget. This is one area that totally needs to be accounted for, transparent. And we have found, Madam Speaker, and the public auditor has found areas that are in such total question, and one of them is Homeland Security. They discovered that one. We should have an oversight hearing on that. I know our good leader, minority leader, has requested an oversight, and why did they cancel it? Why are we hiding something? Are we hiding something? That's the question. Was it canceled because we gotta hide it? We can't show that they've been mismanaging funds? It was easy because the public auditor showed us the way, showed us what was going on. Let's talk about another thing they've discovered at the Port Authority of Guam. 3 audits that came out of the public auditor's report on the shenanigans that were going down at the Port Authority. People getting paid out when they shouldn't be. Not just money, Madam Speaker. If I'm not mistaken, there were guidelines and rules that were broken as well that he was able to report on. That's why it's important that this agency be independent. Independent. Provide the funding that they get through legislation that is consistent. Because I'll tell you, when you're looking through that haystack, when you're unraveling some papers and documents and moving aside some of the dust that's been accumulating on things that people don't want to talk about because they're too afraid to get in trouble, this auditor is not afraid. He's reporting it out, regardless. But pretty soon, somebody's going to go over there, say something that might put that agency in a predicament because of funding. And that's usually how it rolls. It's always about money, isn't it? Forget morals, ethics, transparency, accountability. So I ask my colleagues, all you're doing is ensuring that this public auditor's, the office of the public auditor, because, you know, former Speaker B.J. Cruz may not be there the next time there's an election. Someone else might take over. So let's make this an independent agency to ensure that there's no harassment when it comes to being accountable, and most especially to report out. Be transparent. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Sutusmasi, Senator. On the motion for Bill 227, is there any other speaker? If not, then sponsor may close on Bill 227. On the motion. All right. There's been a motion, notwithstanding the governor's veto, to place Bill 27-37 onto the voting file for override. On that motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that motion carries. We're still on motions. Senator Kanata, you are recognized under motions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place Bill 174-37, sponsored by Senator Joseph Augustine, Roy A.B. Kanata, Dwayne T.D. Nicholas, William A. Parkinson, an act to amend the Chamorro Land Trust lease agreement with the Guam International Country Club Incorporated into the second reading file. I'd also like to note for the record, it has a resolution from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, also from the Dedido Municipal Planning Council, and also from its current leasee, Guam International Country Club. And I humbly ask for my colleagues' support. 179-37.
Senator, can you repeat your motion, please?
My apologies, colleagues. Notwithstanding House rules, I move to place Bill 179-37 onto the second reading file.
This bill has not been reported out, and the motion is notwithstanding the rules to report the bill out of committee. to place this bill onto the session agenda.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
All right. And you read the title of the bill?
Correct. An act to amend the Chamorro Land Trust lease agreement with the Guam International Country Club Incorporated.
All right, we'll take a 2-minute recess. We're back from recess. There's been a motion under motions to place Bill 179-37 onto the session agenda, notwithstanding the rules that prohibit bills without a committee report from being placed on the session agenda. So we are proceeding on debate of that motion, notwithstanding the rules, to place this bill on the session agenda. So Senator Kanata, are you complete with your motion?
Yes, ma'am.
On that motion, Senator Taitagui, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just have a point of inquiry with regards to this bill. It has no committee report. So how are we supposed to debate on this without any information, with no committee report? I guess I'll ask the author who moved a bill onto the session floor that has no committee report. How are we supposed to discuss something when we don't have a committee report in front of us to tell us what happened during the public hearing, or provide all the information that they have, or any kind of information? We're going to need this to discuss. So that's my question. How do we move forward?
Are you asking the mover,
mover of the
yield to that question? Would the sponsor yield?
Certainly, Madam Speaker. The bill is actually under your committee. We did have a public hearing, I believe, in March. I attended the public hearing along with some of my colleagues, and as of right now, I have 3 resolutions in hand. If the previous speaker would like to have them, she can have them, but unfortunately, the committee report isn't available. That is why we're putting a notwithstanding motion at this time. If that should
Senator
suffice.
Taitagui, you have the floor.
Well, I don't think those documents should just be for me. I think it should be everybody should receive any of these documents. And Madam Speaker, it's very difficult to speak on a bill when we don't have information in front of us, is my concern right now, on any bill, regardless. So, thank you.
Sujasmasi. On the motion, Vice Speaker, you're recognized on the motion.
Madam Speaker, I'm going to rise in support of this motion, mainly because it has received the support of both the Chamorro Land Trust Commission and the Vetoed Municipal Planning Council. The buy-in from these 2 important stakeholders should give us in this body the confidence that reinvigorating an underused, undervalued property and the regular revenue it will generate is in the best interest of the Vetoed residents and the Chamorro Land Trust Commission leases awaiting critical infrastructure to be built, or surveys of unused lands in the Chamorro Land Trust Commission's inventory to be funded. Madam Speaker and colleagues, this will also support our government's goals to bring renewable energy generation online, a mandate many of us in this body proudly support it. I thank the proffer of this motion for bringing this to the floor today, and I humbly ask my colleagues to join us in voting yes on this inclusion of Bill 179-37 on our session agenda. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to rise in support of this Bill 179 as for the motion to put on the agenda. Sujasmasi.
Sujasmasi. On the motion. Senator Brown, Senator Brown, Vice Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, I hope we're not getting into the habit of continuing to put bills on the floor that don't have committee reports and bypassing the committee because we choose to do so. second time this happened in the last couple of months. And on face value, I would otherwise say, yes, I support this bill. But I know a little more about this particular bill, this particular issue with the golf course in Vetoed, that really makes me raise my eyebrow, because I get conflicting information, but I also know the history and the fact that we are essentially sanctioning a business that has consistently not paid the money that they owe the Chamorro Land Trust for the use of this land as a golf course. And if this golf course has not been maintained, if it's derelict, if it's not in the best condition, you got to wonder why. And why more so is this particular company that has not met its obligations to the Chamorro Land Trust. And again, I always, amused that I'd be here on the floor speaking in favor, because I know the history of the land trust. A lot of it, it's pretty questionable. But the creation of the land trust, the purpose, the intended purpose of the land trust, the intended purpose of the commercial properties, that I understand. Even though the land trust itself also, as a partner, has failed to ensure that when it does lease out its commercial properties, that those that do maintain the property to the standard and the conditions of the contract, and more importantly, ensure that these parties are paying the money owed to the Chamorro Land Trust and the Chamorro people, and those that are eligible as a result of the Organic Act, receive the monies that they're supposed to receive. Because my dear people of Guam out there, if you're living on Chamorro Land Trust property, and you're upset because you don't have power, you don't have water, you don't have decent roads to drive to get to and from your home, you don't have a proper survey, you built a substandard home with what you have, your 2x4s, Masaya, maybe you got some blocks, maybe you got your hookup to the power, maybe, I don't know. Maybe you knew someone at GPA that would hook you up even though your home didn't meet the standards, but hey, it's a home. You can put a roof over the head of your family. Thank your leadership for that. Thank the leadership in the land trust that hasn't ensured that commercial leases are being properly paid and that the money that's supposed to go in there, for whatever reason, doesn't translate into making your quality of life better. But this particular deal, is this deal to put this project, this golf course on the market so that the best bidder who's willing to pay the best price for this property is going to show up? Or is this deal, as I heard, because I was there at the public hearing, to allow the current leaseholder, who is delinquent and has been delinquent in paying the land trust, and I know because 15 years ago, I was working with Chamorro Land Trust out of the University of Guam when the board requested that we look at their commercial leases, and what do you know? Who was at the top? Not just on the list, Madam Speaker, who is at the top of the list? Can you guess? How about you people of Guam? Can you guess who is at the top of the list? The very players that this bill is intending to accommodate. But oh, Nasaide, we got the resolution from the land trust, we got the resolution from the Vetoed mayor's office and the commission members there, and it's all good. And what were they intending to turn this golf course into? And by the way, for the record, I do not golf. Maybe I need to do that in my retirement life and know how to, hit that little ball across the field there. So I have no interest in golfing because I do not golf. If I recall from the public hearing, Madam Speaker, they want to turn the golf course into a solar farm. So I don't know how the residents around that area feel about that golf course being turned into a solar farm. And I've got no problem with solar power, that's nice. I don't know I want it next to me, or my house, or our houses, Madam Speaker. I don't want to see any of those panels flying in the wind the next typhoon we get. So I have to ask, what's the deal here? I brought up the question during the hearing, Madam Speaker, because this whole issue came up about office space for the Chamorro Land Trust. And I was actually asking the company representative, are you accommodating, you're giving the Chamorro Land Trust office space in your clubhouse? Only to be told later on the side that, no, Senator, they asked us for it. Is that how we do our deals in the government of Guam? You give me this, I give you that. Then we both got something, and the heck with the people of Guam, the heck with the Chamorro Land Trust recipients. Who cares about them? Because we got what we want, you got what you want, we're all good. Let's go have a beer. I don't drink beer either, Madam Speaker. So colleagues, let's just hold each other's hand and, braid each other's hair and go through the process and think this is all good and well. I'm sure all the residents surrounding this project up in Vetoed, I think they'd be more happy the junk cars that are on that street got picked up. Have you driven that road lately? It's becoming the standard in our neighborhood. Junk cars, especially up north. That's the neighborhoods our people live in and our children live in. Why aren't we more worried about that than cutting deals and rewarding those that do not meet and fulfill their obligations to our people? That's what's happening here. And the leaseholders very much want to hold on to this lease agreement, even though they've not performed as they are required to. But let's all forgive all that. Oh, how silly of us to raise those questions. Just let it go. Basta. It's okay. So we got another deal. Let's put a solar farm. Let's give them the lease. They can hold on to that lease. They get to hold on the Chamorro People Land Trust lease money. They get to hold on to it because the legislature here is going to sanction it. And the heck with the junior golfers out there. Like I said, I don't golf. I have no entertainment, amusement. I'll drive the golf cart. That I can do. Colleagues, look at what you're doing. Once again, and I don't care what bill it is. If you can't get it through committee for whatever reason, then that's on you. But to continue to put bills on here and try to justify that somehow we are deliberating the business of the people, because this ain't clean. This ain't a clean deal that we're putting before the legislature today. What we're intending to do is sanction a business that has a lease agreement that has not been consistent in making their lease payments, that has allowed this property to deteriorate. Because don't give me ice the COVID. Man, that's the COVID. That's the excuse, COVID. Is that the case for every other commercial golf course on Guam? I who do not golf, those of you that golf, what is the state of the other golf courses? Are they not in operation? Is the grass not mowed? Are the golf courts not running? Why is that the case with this golf course that, again, when it was built, and this is before my time, was it once again sold to our people so somebody could get their hands on the people's property, and sold the whole idea of we're going to have a golf course where our people, Maniluhuds and Maninahu Tautau Guam, our people can go and play golf and they can do it affordably. They're going to have their own municipal golf course. That's what our people got sold. So the land got taken and the golf course got built. And then the lease agreement got there, and who got the lease agreement? Then they just weren't paying regularly on the lease. They have every excuse why, and I know because I sat in the room with the then administrator of the Chamorro Land Trust, Jesse Garcia. And we heard all those excuses as to why they could not pay. But they wanted to hold on to that lease. And unless it's changed, I mean, they did it during the hearing again. Are they current on their payments? No. But what do? We want to reward those that do not fulfill their obligations to our people. That's what we do. We reward them. Because the deal's already been cut. We're going to take that golf course and, yeah, here you go. You get to keep your agreement. You get to build your solar farm and make your money and hold on to the people's land. And then hopefully, Madam Speaker, they're going to pay the land trust what they owe now. Because instead of the golf course that they have helped contribute to the failure of it, they now got a means of making money so that they can pay back what they owe. And do we think that's a responsible thing to do? What about all the promises that were made to our people of Guam, to our young people? Those of you that are interested in learning to golf, those of you that might want to be junior golfers, we have a place for you. You don't have to pay the 100 plus, 200 plus fee. You can come in here and learn and play. Anybody there can play. But now we're going to just plow all that over and take all that apart and maybe put some office name for the Chamorro Land Trust. So the deal got discussed. And now I don't know. Is it really the developer that offered, or was it indeed as the developer say, oh, no, the land trust asked for the office, asked us to give them the office space? Wow. Wow, 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 wow. But let's all close our ears and our eyes, and let's just vote for it. And we condone the misuse and abuse of the land trust once again, just like we did with the raceway. Remember that? Gosh, we just did that last session in the budget bill. We couldn't even make that bill stand on its own. We had to stick it in the budget. Maybe get us a few extra votes. Because who cares about the budget? Let's do the raceway. Even though I'm sure had that bill been on its own here in the floor, probably still would have passed, looking at the players here. We tell the Chamorro people and those that are eligible, oh, we believe in you, my dear people. We want to get you the utilities. We want you to have a decent life. We don't want you living in a substandard home that the next typhoon's going to blow away. We love you. We love you, our dear people. And yet, who are we really taking care of here? Are we really taking care of our little people out there? No, 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 no. We're going to take care of the business that has the lease agreement, that's violated that lease agreement, that has abused that agreement, that has not paid the money that they owe. Unless they all of a sudden came up with a check before this bill got on the floor. I'm curious, aren't you? Think about that, people of Guam. Once again, think about that, my people. Did we debate the racetrack? No, we didn't. We just stuck it in the Budget Act and just made it law. That's how we play so clean on this floor, people of Guam. That's how we get around it. And yet we go out there and look at our people straight in the face and tell them how we're there for them, instead of how we abuse the power they have so temporarily given us to be on this floor of this legislature to represent them. So once again, my dear people, I ask you out there, take a good look at what we're doing. And you know, we have the you-know-what to do it before an election. That's pretty ballsy. Wow, that's just incredible. Let's not wait till after the election and slip it in. No, let's do it before. Yeah, right, look at us. I hope you take a good look, my dear people, at what your elected officials that you put in power are doing for you. And for all of you out there in the land trust land that are frustrated, and all those of you that are, thousands of you that are standing in line since 1995 to get your lease agreement, to get your little piece of Guam that you want to have to put your home for your family, or you know what, go out there and farm. If that was your passion, that's your passion. And you still don't have that lease agreement. Or all the lease agreements that are put in question now. Good luck on the resolution of that. But who cares about them, right? Who cares about those people out there? Because we're going to take care of the big players. We're going to take care of the owner of this lease, the business owner of this lease that has driven that golf course in the ground and now wants us to sanctify that action by approving this lease agreement. Think about that. And then you decide, my dear people, on your leadership.
Speaker Therese, you're recognized on the, anybody else? Anybody else? Senator Frank Blas, Minority Leader, you are recognized at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I guess I recognize what is before us and what the motion entails. And basically, it's a motion that is either notwithstanding, but is extraordinary in its request. And so it just, I guess a simple question that I would like to be able to pose to the author, if he would yield. And the question is, what's the urgency in hearing this bill today?
Repeat the question again, Minority Leader.
What is the urgency in having to deliberate or to deal with this bill today?
I'm going to yield to the author of the bill or the author of the person asking that the motion be placed.
The proffer of the motion.
I just wanted to make sure, Minority Leader.
Thank you.
Senator Kanata, would you yield to that question as proffered by the Minority Leader?
Madam Speaker, thank you so much to the previous speaker, Senator Blas, a good senator from Barragata. I appreciate his question. Certainly, I think if we can get it done today, let's get it done today. I mean, it's been waiting for a committee report. Unfortunately, it's not in our hands. It's had its support, it's had its naysayers, but that is a part of the democratic process. Unfortunately, we weren't able to facilitate the entirety of the democratic process because we do not have the committee report in hand. But it is my hope that my colleagues support me today so that we can finally move forward with this legislation, and if we get the votes, we get the votes. It proceeds to its next course of action. I, too, am a very much a huge advocate for Chamorro Land Trust. I think that there's been a lot of people waiting. Again, I've stated publicly that the program is as old as I am, and I'm really looking forward to helping find solutions to its program's issues. I hope that suffices the previous question.
Thank you, Senator Kanata. Minority Leader, you still have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the response. However, this is Bill, 178? I think there are bills previous to that and after that not only have not had a public hearing or had their public hearing, it's never been reported out. What about them? What about those bills? Okay? I mean, I'm not here to argue here nor there about the merits of the bill, because there are some questions with regard to the bill as to whether or not it's kosher. If the only reason why is because this is a better time than ever, what about the previous bills? What made this bill so important? And, as was brought up by the gentle lady from Pago Bay, how does this now affect I think, am I correct, 2,000 or 20,000 leases that are questionable with Chamorro Land Trust? How does it affect them? Do we want to put this in front of that? Because that's what we're going to do. Again, it's not to argue the merits for or against the bill. It's why the urgency, with the many other priorities and urgencies that exist with the Chamorro Land Trust. A good time as any. I won't bring that up. But again, I don't see the urgency in being able to have to deal with it now. I foresee that if we do move on it, this is going to be problematic, and there are going to be things that are going to be brought up that should be done in the committee. I know the frustration of having a bill, introducing a bill, and not having a public hearing, or having a public hearing and not being heard after that. That's a part of life here. But you know, for the reasons that bills that haven't had their public hearings, or have had their public hearings and have not hit the floor yet because the committee is not done with it, something we have to, I guess, deal with, toil with on this floor. But can you imagine what a Chamorro Land Trust recipient, how they felt that morning when they opened the newspaper and they saw that their lease was in question after being there for over 2 decades, and for them, they made good, and they felt that they've made good on all their payments and all their agreements. And because of a glitch, it's probably not of their own doing, their lease is in question. And they're watching us right now. I'm going to deliberate another lease. That has nothing, that doesn't help their dilemma or their plight. And we're going to find that the priority right now? Wow.
Anyone else wish to speak on the motion? Anyone else? If not, Senator Roy, Speaker Therese, you're recognized on the motion.
Sí, Sis Masi, and I was in opposition to that motion to place Bill 179-37 onto the agenda today. I don't believe we are prepared to discuss this. As stated earlier, this bill has not been reported out of the committee, and there are reasons for that. We had a hearing in May, prior to the budget hearings, May 2024, and for all those who were there and those who were not, I believe you should be privy to all the testimony that was had and all the correspondence that's been had since then as well, as there has been much. The problem is, first of all, there's some technical difficulties. The resolutions the author is proposing we accept on behalf of the CLTC. Actually, CLTC submitted testimony to us saying they are not testifying on the bill because there were errors in the resolutions. And even in subsequent meetings, when they discussed the resolution, there were again errors, and since then they have not chosen to go back and submit testimony on this bill. There was questions raised as to the wrong lot number that we are discussing. There's questions raised as to whether there were unregistered lobbyists involved in this transaction with the legislature and the authors of the bill. There was questions from BBMR on the fiscal note saying they were unable to determine what was being proposed here as being valid based on the they were unable to determine the debt service for SUDA as this bill is being proposed to assist with that. The bill actually said these funds, if we do this special deal with the Guam International Country Club owners, that the money would go towards, can potentially be used to help fund the Chamorro Land Trust Endowment Fund. And I guess part of it would be used as well for its just regular operations. There's so many mechanics of this bill that are not fully vetted. There's, according to the original proposal, no competition, no solicitation of anything. We are just going to make a very special deal with this one company based on its proposal to the CLTC, notwithstanding that it has completely failed in its obligations to the Chamorro Land Trust for years. It's failed. And we should reward it by giving it a bigger deal, allowing it to make even more revenues off of the Chamorro Land Trust for a promise that we would receive some of that revenue up front. Well, we received promises years ago from this company that we would just receive regular payments. And they were unable to fulfill that. There was, on the proposal to convert this golf course property that belongs to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to a solar farm, none of the technical aspects of that have been vetted by either the Chamorro Land Trust or by the legislature, not by GPA, GWA, EPA, although there was some testimony from a member of the public citing that there are potential issues with these storage of these batteries and that those should all be vetted for, and they are not in this bill. So I do not take lightly reporting bills out of committee. You all know that. Some of you don't like that. That's because I think it is our responsibility as committee chairs to make these bills better. And where they have glowing lack of information, that we should fill those gaps so that these agencies can actually move forward with the authority and the appropriate parameters that they need in order to make good deals for the government of Guam. Good deals for the people of Guam. Good deals for those who've been waiting for years. Cash alone does not help those waiting for years if it's not going to go to the area that we need it to go to help those who've been waiting for years. This bill was touted as a companion bill with another bill that we've already passed. That was to authorize the Chamorro Land Trust to partner with USDA for SUDA funding to bring in infrastructure. And that's how we're going to bring in the infrastructure for those who've been waiting for water and power, especially water or sewer, in order to actually get permits for their properties. That's really the critical need. And this bill does not address that critical need. We've addressed through the legislature many more of their critical needs, such as ensuring that there is funds in the guarantee fund after the typhoon so that they can guarantee the loans that they were able to get from SBA. or FEMA and make sure that they could make those repairs to their houses. We've been able to pass the legislation that would allow them to partner with Guam Housing and USDA again for loans for property, for loans for infrastructure, more importantly, for entire tracts of land. We've got bills on our agenda, at least 2 of them, for the CLTC in particular, to address what the previous speaker raised in the massive problem of what the AG back in 2018 determined to be illegal void leases while people have been living on the properties, built homes, relied on actions by the Chamorro Land Trust to resolve those issues. These are issues that are affecting these beneficiaries, these people who've put their blood and sweat into building their homes and in good faith and reliance on the government. Not in, and I don't agree, I guess. We've seen so many bad deals by the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. I have no qualms in stating that I approach all of these deals with a lot of caution, a lot of questions, and a lot of double-checking the facts. And I think that's exactly what we need to do with this type of a sweetheart deal, and don't make any mistake that it is not. It is a sweetheart deal because they are under no obligation unless they get the contract with GPA. And if they don't, we still have no resolution for the back rent that they owe, or for the failure to comply with the previous terms of the lease. This is the kind of thing that I really think makes the people that watch the legislature and the government in general really become cynical, really get angry at the government. You want to go take care of this delinquent golf course owners while they convert to a solar farm to make a huge profits off of our land while we wait? Now, I've tried to do this in a systematic way where we can take care of those lessees with some of the bills that we've put onto the agenda today, and we can take care of these special interests, racers, the special interests, country club owners, the special interest solar farm lobbyists, after we take care of these beneficiaries as far as we can, and we allow these leases to move forward. Those leases do not depend on this bill. Even the infrastructure now does not depend on this bill, because they can avail of USDA funding. We've pledged in our last budget $9 million in revenues towards infrastructure funding. And if they are able to turn that in the way that they predict, we can continue that as a revolving fund. So we are not desperate. We've also got the submerged cables, originally going for $10,000 a lease for submerged lands. Those monies are going to start coming in. They just approved another one with Tata in their last meeting. $100,000 per cable, 6 cables per conduit. Finally, getting some of the revenue that the government, that the Chamorro Land Trust should be getting. Ways to enforce it. Even the Attorney General testified against this bill passing right away. And I just think before we put this on the floor, we should ensure that we've filled all those gaps that continue to exist, including testimony from the Chamorro Land Trust, including exactly how this deal is going to work for the benefit of the beneficiaries and not just for the golf club owners who are converting now to solar farm owners. not just for them. And how we're going to make sure that this is enforceable. And this is where we have been working with the Attorney General's office, and I would urge our body to continue to do that. When we want to complain and criticize the Chamorro Land Trust while we just continue to raid the trust, move the land to where you want to move it, give it to people who you want to give it to, without allowing them to do what they've been mandated to do, to enforce delinquent leases, to encourage competition, to get the best deal that they could. So I know that this looks very tempting to some, but I'm saying, let's wait for a committee report so you can get it all in writing and that you can vote informed. Not relying on what someone told you. You can rely on the documents because we put them all into our committee reports. You can rely and you can see what's not in there in some cases. But that's what I would ask. And I agree with the previous speaker. What is the rush to put this on today versus next session or the session after that when these things are plugged up, when these gaps are filled? If this is not going to help them to get sewer and water into their properties, what is the rush? The rush is to benefit private commercial businesses. That was not what it might sound great to some of you, but that is just not what the Chamorro Land Trust was made for. It wasn't made for them, so let's focus and please prioritize what we've come here to do. Make these leases run, fix those legal problems with thousands of leases we found out now, much more than originally predicted. There were 102, now it's come to like 2,800 that we need to take care of. And even with the bills on the agenda today, we found out that there are still another class of leases, all in good faith, well, mostly all, I can't speak for every single one, where what previous commissioners or previous directors did is just not consistent with the law, and so we have to find ways to remedy that. Otherwise, we kick them all out of their properties and the homes that they have built in some cases, in many cases. So I would ask that we address this. No, Madam Speaker. So, again, I ask my colleagues to wait for the committee report. I believe you should act informed by the facts as they can be put in writing, as all previous legislatures have done, and as we have done on most of our bills, and according to our rules, without exception.
Thank you, Speaker. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, Senator San Augustine, you may speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, I think I need to speak. Number one, pura patapananga. That's what I'm hearing. Let's all wait and see. You know, it was already addressed that it was in September the bill was introduced, and then it was brought up that it was heard in, let me look at my notes here, so I don't get off track. I got my own notes. It was heard on May 16, and then the potential amendments that were based on CLTC resolution were sent Speaker's office on April 24. And then not only this bill, but there was another bill before, a lot earlier in this term. Bill 16-37, mineral extraction lot. And you know what?
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Again, and Rice.
Again.
So point of order, I read the rule earlier. The rule is that bills that are not reported out of committee are not allowed to be discussed in debate, especially on another bill.
Madam Speaker.
Senator Joe, you still have the floor.
You know, I have a difference of opinion of that statement by the previous speaker because I can't speak about it, many of us can, but she can go in and rattle away about all the other bills that passed that needs to fix the CLTC. That kind of bothers me. Number one, I've been very involved with CLTC. I've been barking at them, asking them, come on, let's get things done. Let's identify what you need. This bill, okay, is it really a sweetheart's deal? How was the others? They're not sweetheart's deal. But you know what? I'm in support of my colleague who's the co-sponsor of the bill, and I'm the author of the bill, to move it forward. If there are any concerns that the oversight chair has, then put it out. All the reason for the delay. You know what? Everybody talks about earlier, you know, we're here to do a job. I have bills in my committees, and I think majority of them have come out. And if there's anything that's due to come out, I work that with whoever the author is, if they want it out or not, or I'm trying to get the votes, which is no different from one of the other committees told me on one of my bills, can't kick it out because no votes. Hey, nothing we can do about it. This bill, if you got a report, then kick it out. Because the previous bill I had, I'm not even going to identify the numbers because what? Might be ruled out of order from bringing it up. It was heard by me because of the rules. The standing rules is after 120 days, you can hear it as the author. Heard it, gave it to the committee. Did it come out? No. Did she have a hearing? No. This one was heard, Madam Speaker. And I rise in support of the motion made by my colleague, co-sponsor of the bill, to put it on the floor. With that, Madam Speaker, I just ask the colleagues to let's support it. If there's anything you need to flush it out on the floor. Quit keeping it hidden in your office. It needs to come on the floor. That's what our job is, to get it out on the floor. Let's discuss it and let's move on. And if it doesn't pass, we move on. There's no sweat off my back. The goal is to introduce bills as constituents bring up to my office or any of our colleagues, and we see how far we can go. If it can pass, then it passes. If it doesn't, then it doesn't, and we move on. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Senator San Augustine. Anyone else wishing to speak on the motion as provided by Senator Roy Kanata, the senator from Talafofo? If not, from Baragat, I apologize, or Jigo. If not, no one else wishes to speak. Senator Kanata, you may close on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Certainly, you know, I hear the reservations of some of my colleagues. My understanding is that there has been amendments to their lease, and it's been they've been coming back and paying their dues. Whatever the issues were before with the COVID, those things are being amended as we speak. They've been up to date with their payments. Again, there are other properties out there that the Chamorro Land Trust has. This is not, again, the one piece that the Chamorro Land Trust has only for everyone that's on this wait list. But this bill also gives financial structure for us to provide the infrastructure that is needed for a lot of our communities that are facing such hardships out there. Ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't a part of the body that introduced legislation to provide sewer regulations for all the people up north that has cost astronomical costs for everyone. Even commercial groups can't even afford to put a mile of sewer. I'm not an engineer, but I know certainly that the construction costs have gone astronomically high. And people have gone to extraordinary means and positions and amendments to their design plans to try to fix this problem. But sewer costs a lot. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't belong to you. Let's make the big business person pay $5 million for infrastructure developments. But at the end of the day, it goes back to GovGuam. Oh, you think that's a problem for commercial groups? Imagine the people who are in Chamorro Land Trust and have to have water lines in place. Oh, well, you need to pay for engineering costs. You need to pay for every square meter of frickin' pipe. And then again, it doesn't belong to you. GPA, another one. You want power poles to serve power to your home? Okay. Well, you live actually 700 feet from the closest power pole. Sir, you have to provide a power pole for every 100 feet to get to your residence. Jesus Christ, $5,000, quote unquote, to put one power pole. That's not with wire. Think about that. And then again, it's not yours. It belongs to the government of Guam, CCU. These are huge investments that perhaps this legislation can amend and resolve for a lot of people. And I want to make it very clear, I have no special interests. I don't play golf like Senator Joanne Brown stated earlier. I have no interest in the golf community. I don't own a solar farm. I want to put that out there on the record. I don't even own solar panels on my roof. I also don't own land in Dedido, specifically on Batulu Street or on the quarry area. Because between Batulu Street and the quarry is the prime diamond piece of property that we are all going crazy about currently. And I understand that land is very important. It's a resource. But if we don't use it for a solar farm, we don't use it for a golf course, oh, we'll just let it sit. There's a lot of property out there in Ta'i, in Erlahan, Umadak, because of land scams back in the day before my time again. Chamorro Land Trust was so good and important. But I want to quote the late Angel Santos, and I have no disrespect to his family, as much as some colleagues believe I do for stating this on the record, that if the generations will come and generations will go, but if the generation today is not willing to face those challenges, then the next generation will inherit those same challenges. So I kindly ask my colleagues to support this legislation, and let's help resolve the issues that our community faces continuously for whatever reason. I've also mentioned that if I seek to make Chamorro Land Trust autonomous, it removes politics entirely. We've given them some autonomy, we've given them board membership. But for whatever reason, we cannot get board members into the panel. We also have difficulty in other agencies. Maybe it's not germane to this bill, but there are other agencies that have board membership. There's boards that don't even have any members because no one wants it. It's a difficult task. So, with that being said, I'm not lying. If I'm lying, the mayor's lying. Because Mayor Savara signed in blue ink, which is legally recognized. Also, Yvonne S. Akda of DMPC, president. CLTC, Chamorro Land Trust. Are we taking their word for what they want as a resolution? Otherwise, then an idea or resolution is useless too, because then that means our resolutions are lying. So, I also want to recognize that GICC also had a letter written to us. I am not the oversight chair. I totally respect you, Madam Speaker. I have committee rights as well. If I don't want to hear a bill, I guess I can hold it to whatever. But even if I don't have a bill that I like, I still let it go. I'm not holding it. And I know you can make committee reports work fast, because that one public health bill, 24 hours, all 70 pages were done. So again, I totally respect you. I even fought with you for the land oversight chair this year. You won. So all I'm asking is for us to get this bill on this floor, and I'm kindly asking for everyone's support. Whether or not we win the bill, life goes on, Prim. So, again, man, this is the longest time I've ever spoken on the session floor, but I'm just here to try to find some kind of resolve for our people out there. I don't want my next generation to inherit the same challenges. If you want $9 million from the general fund too, let's appropriate it. I'll support you on that. I didn't object to any amendments in your appropriations to Chamorro Land Trust, specifically because I know that Chamorro Land Trust people have been waiting, and I know that it can help our people. So I don't want my words to be mistakenly taken here that I'm a businessman. I own solar panel. I own property right next to Dedido quarry, and I'm a golfer. So, again, I'm not even the main sponsor on this bill, but I know the importance of this bill and legislation of its financial structure to help infrastructure be in place in our people's properties. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. On the bill, on the motion, notwithstanding the rules and without a committee report to place Bill 179-37 onto the session agenda, is there an objection? There's an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries.
Madam Speaker,
We're still under motions. Is there any other motion? Motions.
Madam Speaker, can we move on the appointees?
We're still on motions. Are there any other motions? If not, then we will recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow. Recess until 9 a.m.